You ever feel like you've just hit a wall, in life or maybe even in your faith? Well, the final chapters of the Bible were written for people feeling exactly that. So today, we're going to unpack them. But not as some big mystery we have to solve, but as a practical user's guide for living with real, resilient hope in a pretty complicated world. Let's get into it.
And look, this question, it really hits home, doesn't it? When life gets tough, when your beliefs get challenged, when the future just feels, well, uncertain, what actually keeps you going? How do you build a faith that's more than just a Sunday thing, but something that's durable, something real?
It turns out the early church was dealing with the exact same stuff, and they were under some intense pressure. And their leaders, guys like Peter, James, John, and Jude, they wrote a series of letters that offered a really practical, battle-tested answer. So we're going to explore their game plan, from finding hope when you're hurting to taking real action and holding on for that final victory.
So where do we even start? Well, before you can act, before you can defend what you believe, you need a solid foundation. And for these writers, that foundation is hope. And I don't mean wishful thinking. I mean a deep, unshakable confidence, especially when you're right in the middle of a trial.
And we find this anchor, this solid ground, in two really key letters, Hebrews and 1 Peter. And what's interesting is they don't shy away from the reality that life is hard. Instead, they lean into it. They see it as the very starting point for building a faith that can truly withstand anything. Okay, so the book of Hebrews throws this massive curveball. For its original audience, who were mostly Jewish Christians, their whole relationship with God was centered on this system of priests and repeated sacrifices. Hebrews comes along and says, look, that system was vital, but it was just a shadow pointing to something way, way better. In Jesus, we find the reality, a once-for-all sacrifice that gives us a better, more direct path to God. And that's not just some theological upgrade, it's the bedrock of a Christian's confidence.
And the result of this better covenant? It's huge. It's practical. No more fear. No more keeping your distance. The invitation is to come to God boldly, with confidence. Can you imagine? That's a game-changing level of access, and it's the anchor for our hope.
Building right on top of that, the letter of 1 Peter calls this confidence a lively hope. This isn't some dusty old idea on a shelf. No, it's alive, it's active, it's powerful, and it's specifically designed to get believers through what he calls fiery trials. This hope, born from the resurrection, is made for the real world.
Okay, so you've got this incredible, lively hope. Awesome. But now what? Do you just sit on it? Does it stay as just an internal feeling? Not a chance. The next step is all about putting that hope into action. It's about a faith that actually works. And that's where the book of James comes in. And let me tell you, James does not mess around. He's super direct. For him, there's just no such thing as a passive, private faith. If your faith is real, he says, it's going to show up in your life. Genuine belief always bears fruit. It does something. And this leads to maybe his most famous line, and it's so direct you just can't miss it. He says that faith without action is like a body without a pulse. It's just lifeless. The key takeaway here is that our actions are the evidence, the proof of a living faith.
Then, the letters from John, they kind of give us a checklist, right? A way to see what this active faith actually looks like in real life. He gives these practical tests. Are you actually living honestly, walking in the truth? Are you actively showing love to other believers? Do you have the wisdom to spot and reject false ideas? Are you supporting those who are out there doing the work? This is what faith in motion looks like.
All right, so you've got this amazing community. It's built on hope, it's full of action. Sounds great, right? Well, that kind of thing also makes you a target. And the early writers knew that one of the biggest threats wasn't going to come from the outside, but from within, in the form of, well, spiritual misinformation. And this is where 2 Peter and Jude come crashing in. Think of them as the security team or maybe the alarm system for the early church. Their letters are short, they're urgent, and they are intense. They're basically sounding the alarm about false teachers who are sneaking into communities and twisting the truth. Their whole mission was to equip believers to defend the faith. And Jude gives us this super practical 3-step playbook for staying strong. First, he says you have to earnestly contend for the faith. You got to fight for it because it's valuable. But it's not just about fighting against bad ideas, it's also about proactively building yourselves up and intentionally staying rooted in God's love. It's a strategy that's both defensive and constructive. But then, right after this intense call to fight, Jude ends with this absolutely beautiful promise. Yes, you have to contend. Yes, you have to build. But ultimately, he reminds them that God is the one who is able to keep you from falling. It's such a powerful reminder that our efforts are held up by His power.
Okay, let's recap. We've got our hope, we're putting it into action, we know how to guard it, but what's the point of it all? Where is this whole story headed? Well, all these themes, hope, action, perseverance, they find their ultimate meaning in the Bible's final climactic book.
And that book is, of course, Revelation. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A lot of people see it as this confusing, maybe even scary roadmap of the future. But its original purpose was actually to be an encouragement. It's an unveiling of Jesus Christ, and it was meant to give suffering churches the ultimate perspective and courage when they were facing just overwhelming opposition.
But really, we can demystify it by looking at the big picture. The story arc goes something like this. It reveals the victory of the Lamb, Jesus. It shows the world's rebellion against his rule. It describes a final judgment, and it all leads to this breathtaking vision of a new creation where God finally makes everything new. That's the overarching story.
And this is maybe the single most important thing to get from Revelation, both for them back then and for us right now. It's not just about a victory in the distant future, it's about a present reality. The central message is that despite all the chaos, the suffering, the injustice you see in the world, the Lamb has already won. He is reigning now. I mean, just imagine being a persecuted Christian in the first century and hearing that. It changes everything. It reframes your suffering, not as a defeat, but as your part in a story that is already heading toward a guaranteed win.
And that's how the entire Bible ends, with this promise and this prayer. A promise of return and a heartfelt plea from a people who are holding on to a lively hope, living out an active faith, and waiting for that ultimate victory. It's just a powerful reminder that this story isn't over yet. It points all of us toward a final, hopeful destination.